Alrighty, welcome back to the Are You Being Real, People Being Real show. It is episode 223. A long title, still kind of figuring out.
Transition phase.
I think so. I'll tell you guys more about that in the weeks ahead. I think it's time as I continue to evolve, as the show continues to evolve, for it all to just kind of continue to evolve. So, T, I'm so excited to have you back on the show. This is actually your third appearance. And for everybody tuning in, so Taylor and I didn't actually know each other before the first time I had Taylor on the show. And I told you to come by, I gave you the address, and you gave yourself like 15 minutes to get over to the house. And we literally lived like a stone throw away at the time.
Yep.
And it was an instant bromance. And we lived together for a period of time. It was not romantic. Was it romantic?
I might comment on that.
Okay.
I would say live together is different than what actually happened.
Okay.
Here's what actually, in my mind, my interpretation, what story I like to tell myself is that I went through a fucking hard time, right?
Sorry to be laughing.
Yeah, thanks. Ouch.
I was just interested. It was interesting.
You were the shitter. It. No. I went through an absolutely horrific, whatever, I don't overstate it. I went through bankruptcy. I went through personal bankruptcy after the collapse of a company. And I could not afford to pay rent. And I needed a place to stay. I had a company that I was trying to get off the ground. I needed a home base. I needed to be in LA. And this angel, some might call him, I'm one of those some, took me in. He didn't charge me rent. I lived in his second bedroom. And I was telling someone a story that I want to tell you right now. That I think I've told you this, but let's just to make sure.
Yeah.
Mark takes me in, and he saw promise. He knew that I wouldn't be there forever. I think he saw pretty sure this guy will get back on his feet at someday. I think at first I was like, can I stay with you for 2 weeks, right? Can I 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And you're like, yeah, for sure. And then it turned into like 2 months, and 6 months later, you were like, so now that you have a business, maybe you could pay rent. And I'm like, I'm actually moving out now. And, but the story I like to tell is I stood, 50 feet from here. I used to stand at the foot of your guest bed, my bedroom at the time. And I used to stand there, and I would have this piece of paper, and I would when you weren't around, I'd have the door closed. Sometimes I would put a towel along the bottom of the door so that to make sure you wouldn't hear me doing this because I was shy about it. And I would read off my vision, right? And my vision at that time, I remember standing 10 feet from here and checking my bank account. It had $1.12 in it, and I screenshot it. And I was like, wow, that's definitely not enough to go to Erewhon and get this $10 green juice that I just got. Anyways, it was around that time, right? I owed a bunch of people money, and the company was still kind of tanking. And I would stand at the bottom of the bed, and I would have this vision of taking you, David, Josh, and my friend Serena to dinner. And this vision, because what it represented to me is that I could finally thank the 4 people that were the most instrumental and the most helpful and the most there for me, supportive in my dark times, right? And I would stand there and I would read it off, and I would get to tears. I would literally read it off to be like, and Mark and Serena and Josh and David are there, and I'm buying them anything that they want for dinner, and they're ordering whatever they want to eat. They're ordering whatever they want to drink, and I would get in this really clear vision of being able to just thank you guys in a formal way. And again, that was when I had $1.12 in my account at a business that I thought might do okay. I hadn't started it, definitely hadn't made a dime yet. And a few months later, because of having this place to land and ground and launch from, I took you guys to that dinner, and it was fucking crazy surreal for me. I remember just looking at you guys and be like, what? It's all happening. This is what I've read over and over and over again. And I didn't mean to take you to a place that didn't serve alcohol. That wasn't me trying to save money. I didn't realize I didn't. Remember we got there and David's like, they don't even serve beer here. And I was like, I guess that's a savings for me. Anyways, so I want to say publicly, I've said it a few times before, but thank you. You were so much more to me than a roommate or someone who let me flop at his place. You gave me the energy here. We would run our businesses from that dining room table. And now that company, dude, remember you had me in Winning Weeks, and I was like, my vision is to make $1 million in this business. And we've passed $1 million in that business now. And I look over at that table and think that's where it started. I mean, I've got the same laptop that I used on that table.
Same uncomfortable chairs.
Same uncomfortable chairs. Yeah, exactly. But it all started right here. So thank you. T,
thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for the love. It was a treat to get to see you during that time. You, despite what you were going through, just constantly had a positive attitude, and we're both taking responsibility, I think, to what got you to that place, which you shared so vulnerably about in your TEDx talk, Reinventing Rock Bottom, but also just how committed you were to your vision, as well as just being so caring and loving to the people around you, which was so apparent in your story. One reason why I was so welcoming, many reasons, because I love you, but I kind of knew that you wouldn't be here forever. Yeah. And the reason for that is you are a master reinventor. And I know when we were talking about having you come back on the show, I was kind of thinking, what would be a really great story for Taylor to share on the show? And that's one that I just keep coming back to, because you've worn so many different hats in your life. You've worked so many different careers, have had so many highs, you've had many challenges as well, but you keep getting back on the horse. And I just think it's so inspiring. I know it's a big challenge for a lot of people where, we'll put ourselves out there and maybe get some instant results, maybe not quite the results, or maybe they'll be short-lived and we got to move on to something else. And then there's other people who stay in the same career their whole entire life and maybe wondered what else was out there but never had the courage to do it. So I knew that was something. I knew, you had bounced around a little bit from, Canada to New York to LA, and I just kind of figured that at some point it was going to be time for you to move on. So I'm curious to know your take on reinvention. So if you'd be down, I'd love if you could share a little bit of some of the hats you've worn and how you look at that.
You know the story of the Phoenix?
I think you actually told it the first time you were on the show.
So yeah, the story of the Phoenix is that the Phoenix is this beautiful bird, this magical creature, right? And it lives for 500 years, depending on the mythology that you're reading. Let's say it lives for 500 years. And after 500 years, it goes into its nest and it burns up, like to fucking nothing, to ashes, to nothing. Everything burns up and it's over. That lifetime or that incarnation or that time or that remembrance is over. And then it is born anew, and a new phoenix comes out, a new bird, like fresh, fucking healthy, beautiful, like fully reinvented, it comes out. Here's what we miss a lot as people is that those mythologies, that's us. The reason we resonate with these stories, the reason we resonate with the hero's journey, the reason we resonate with the mythology of the Phoenix is it's because it represents a part of us. And I like to embrace that. I embrace my inner Phoenix. The 3/4 length sleeve I have and chest piece on my tattoo it's Phoenix. And it represents the fact that we have the ability as human beings to completely reinvent ourselves from the ashes, from nothing. And to get to that place, to get to the ashes, shit has to burn down sometimes. And that's fucking chaotic and can be painful. It can also be an incredibly beautiful process, but most of the time in my experience, it can be incredibly painful. And when it burns down and all that's left is rock bottom can be an incredibly solid place to build off of. Only after it's all burned down can we start again. And what I love to look at is like, what if we could embrace those phases? What if we could embrace the down times? What if we could fully accept where we are, no matter where we're at? Right. And the core of the reinvention, of that financial reinvention, the business reinvention for me was not saying, fuck, I really need to make $1 million now. I need to get back on my feet. I need to pay Mark back. I need to blah, 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 blah. It came from going, here's where I am. I'm not wealthy anymore. I made millions of dollars in my 20s. I was used to making good money. And I had to come to the realization that is just not where I was. I was bankrupt. I needed to stay in my friend's guest bedroom. I needed my friend Josh to bring me groceries when I was sick because I couldn't afford them. I needed Serena to send me money at one point because I could not afford to live. I needed my mom to send me. My mom sent me $1,500 in the midst of it. She said, hey, I think you could use this. And she sent that to me at a moment that I was in Boston and I didn't know how I couldn't afford to get back to New York where I was living at the time. And she just intuitively sent me $1,500, which is incredible, to support me. And what if we could fully embrace that time and go, yeah, here's where I am. And sure, I want to change things, but I'm fully accepting this is where I'm at right now. And so that's where for me, it was like, here's where I am. I fucking failed. I I started this company. I wanted it to be incredible. Yes, from an impact standpoint, it did well. It funded 500 schools and libraries and water projects and girl scholarships and anti-sex trafficking work and veterans rehabilitation and homelessness initiatives and tuberculosis research and just tons of projects on the impact side. And from a financial standpoint, I, as the CEO, failed. Didn't work. Money is the lifeblood of any company or nonprofit. Money is the lifeblood. And I ran out of money. And so it died, right? And I had to look myself in the mirror and be like, okay, that's exactly what happened. What did I learn from it? And every day getting up, being like, mining that failure for as much gold, as much wisdom as possible, and then use it for the next thing. And so that, and because of that, because of like being, this is where I am, I actually then got to enjoy every phase. Like, look at this, Mark, you know, we're sitting here, we've got this, I don't know how much I spent on this. It's probably $4 or something, right? For this water. This green juice was $10, right? I know the exact moment that I bought my first $10 green juice and felt good about it, right? And felt, because I actually had the money to get it. I remember the moment that I could buy a jacket for the first time after like a coat. I used to like fucking wrap a blanket around myself for ages because I wanted like a quality jacket. I just couldn't afford one. I remember the moment that I got to go walk in and buy this jacket for $200 or $250, and it was so meaningful. So I got to be so present in that reinvention process that I got to enjoy every single phase of it, right? Because I got to start from zero, affording nothing, drinking like Soylent out of the fridge and making rice and beans every day. I got to go to the place where I could then shop at Erewhon and I could enjoy it. And I just bought a fucking $8 chocolate bar and like it was nothing. And that, to a lot of people, that's like, yeah, you bought a chocolate bar. To me, is incredibly meaningful because I came from that place, right? So in accepting that, it was like every phase has been incredibly enjoyable, from the free room here to the room that I was, the half a room that I was renting in Encinitas when I moved there, to the little tiny suite that I was renting after that, to the little bit bigger suite, to now I'm living on the ocean. It's been 18 months since I was here. Maybe, a year, 18 months, or no, yeah, 18 months since I was here. And I'm living in my dream place, and the reason for that is because I never mixed up the whole do, have, be, the whole do, have, be. Like people think, have, do, be. They think that once you have the house, once you have the car, then you can do the things that you want to do. Like, I don't know, go to the beach or whatever. And then you can be what you want to be, like as happy, right? And it's actually flipped. And I knew that. That's the nice thing about doing a lot of self work, is I knew that I needed to be the like abundant, wealthy person, be the happy, healthy person. That would lead to me able to be doing the things that are in alignment with that happy, healthy person, which then happens where you have the things that are in alignment with that, which is like a place on the beach. That makes sense?
Totally. So I loved, I'm just so impressed with your resilience. So inspiring to literally be on the roller coaster and to accept where you're at, as well as to just be willing to do whatever it takes to get to where you want to be, as well as being grateful. So the question that I had is, in the situation of bankruptcy, it's obvious that it's like, all right, I need to make big changes in my life right now, or I'm literally going to be on the street. Yeah. So I'm curious to know, as it pertains to maybe someone who is dealing with the situation where it's not quite as black and white. Maybe they're feeling like they're really struggling or burning to change some of their external situations, their job, the relationship they're in, where they live, whatever it might be up front. But I'm kind of curious to know, when is it time to burn something down in your experience?
You know what, man, that's a really interesting question. And I think that I'd love to comment on something that might answer it, might just bring us closer to answer that question, is exactly where you're at now, where you're at this moment, where I'm at this moment, where anyone who's listening or watching is at this moment. The person that brought you there is you, completely. That's my belief, and just leave it at that. Okay. Sure. So when we actually own that thing, then we can decide. Then we can actually really look at it and be like, okay, well, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm thinking. If you're broke, if I was bankrupt, I looked at myself. I was like, well, I made myself bankrupt. My thoughts around money must be so unhealthy that I became bankrupt. I need to completely rewire my brain, my neurological pathways around money, because I'm sitting here bankrupt, right? That's the sign, right? Obviously, hello, the common denominator with this money situation is my thinking, right? And so what I started to do up in your room here is I would started reading these books, right? Like The Science of Getting Rich, You're a Badass at Making Money. Ages ago, I read Think and Grow Rich, started like employing some of those principles, Richest Man in Babylon. These are books that are very readily available on Audible for a couple bucks, or in any bookstore. And these are books that help us to rewire ourselves around money. And if, a lot of people hear about that and they have this tension around money, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't want money. Oh, wait, what? So you must be not eat. I guess you soak in the prana from the sun and that's enough for you. Stuff costs money in this world, right? And so for me, it was rewiring myself around money, and it was rewiring myself around health. I was always getting injuries. My knees were always hurting. I was always sore. I was getting cramps, all the things. And my relationships kept falling apart. I needed to rewire myself around relationships. It was a time in my life where I was like, holy shit, I need to get my shit together, right? All of these things are falling apart. The things that the common denominator again is me, right? So that's when, sure, money's one of them, reading the books, and then reading the books on relationship, and then going to Hoffman. I went to this week-long deep dive personal intensive to really uproot some stuff and deal with it, right? Because it's uncomfortable knowing that I'm the one who freaking brought me here. I'm the one. And it can be the hardest thing to admit. And people will fight tooth and nail to talk about, but it was my mom, but it was my dad, but it was da-da-da. And yes, you're right. They did contribute to the problem. And let's leave the conversation around whose fault it is and just say, here's where you're at right now, right? This is exactly where you're at right now. So you have the sole responsibility to do something. The nice thing is that our lives are a complete reflection of how we think, right? If you're broke, you think broke. If you're wealthy, you're thinking wealthy. If you're in an amazing relationship, then you think you're worthy of an amazing relationship. If you can't stay in a relationship longer than 2 months, then you don't think you're capable of having that, or you don't deserve that love in your life, or whatever the reason is, right? So the most amazing thing about that is to not get down on ourselves and be like, well, I guess I just think like shit all the time. Is to go, all the signs are around us with exactly how we think. We don't have to think, well, how do I think about relationships? How are your relationships? That shows you how you think. For me, the stark contrast is like, how do I think about money? Not good, right? So it's like reinvention of identifying, looking around at your life. What are the symbols? What are they saying? What are the ways that you think in an unhealthy manner? Perfect. Amazing clarity. Then what are you going to do to think in a different way? The nice thing is there are books. I don't know how many cajillions of books have been written in this, in this day and age, but there are books out there that can help you to get over whatever it is, the unhealthy way of thinking. Right? Or you can go to courses like MITT, which you're a huge proponent of. I love Hoffman. Jake loves ALA. And I think a lot of these courses have scholarship programs for people that are kind of just getting started out. There, you can completely reinvent the way that you are in any area of life, regardless of what has happened to you in the past. So yeah, that's what we were talking about. When do you burn it down, right? I would actually focus more on where you want to go, because then those things naturally burn down. The relationships, the friendships, the work, the whatever situations, they can't resonate with you anymore. When you're really focused on where you want to go, getting super clear. And what I love to do is listen. People, us men, especially, we can be like, I'm going to tell the world what's going to happen. I'm going to put the universe in a fucking headlock, and I'm going to say, this is the way that we're going. I'm going to make $1 million by the time I'm 25 because blah, 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 whatever it is, right? And that's what we do. We tell the universe what's going to happen. And I think right now, especially this time in our lives and this time, the universe and the world, it's time for us to listen, right? It's time for us to sit back, especially as men, and go, okay, what am I here for? Not what are the wounds that I'm going to try to heal by making $1 million or having a nice car, blah, blah, blah. What does the universe genuinely want of me? What does the universe genuinely want of me? And the only way that we can find that out, or let's say my method of finding that out, is to really listen. They say that when you're praying, you're talking to God, right? Or talking to the universe, or however you want to say it. They say when you're meditating, you're listening. When you're praying, you're talking to God. When you're meditating, you're listening to God. And for whatever that God is to you, right? And so I like to get really quiet, and I like to listen and surrender to what is instructed of me, right? As for me, I was the school guy, right? I was helping build schools all over the world and houses all over the world. On many layers, one of those layers being my ego, fully identified with that identity of I'm the school guy, right? And so when that stuff started to burn to the ground in its own way, and the universe started saying basically kind of whispered in my ear and said you need to help people get TED Talks. I was like, you're joking, right, universe? That sounds super lame. I'm the school guy. I was literally we're having a conversation, be you're joking, right? I'm the guy who helps people build with the homes and stuff. And the thing that came to me the easiest and the most flowing and the most profitable was helping people get TEDx talks. And I thought, and so I had to like die an ego death. I'm not going to be the school guy anymore, and I'm going to do this. But I was so committed to like really listening to what I was supposed to do, trusting that the next step would unfold. And then now that we've helped over 200 people land TEDx talks, now I actually see what it's for. Now I see this like this incredible opportunity to literally raise the vibration of the planet by getting incredibly impactful messages out there. Like at our company, we say like our ethos is we're shifting humanity by starting the movements that will shift humanity by lifting up the people that will lead them. And that's what we're doing. If we, Kevin, 4 million views to his TEDx talk, right? 4 million people. He literally helped. He was an instrumental part of breaking the stigma of depression and mental health because of one amazing TEDx talk, right? And so that all came from, anyways, this place of listening, totally. Of being passive, being open, being nurtured, being like receptive to what we're here for. And when we do that and then combine it with that, doing the affirmations and the vision and the goals and stuff like that, that's when shit gets crazy powerful. And that, in my mind, is a representation of what we want in the leadership of our world right now. Because what I'm talking about is a very feminine dynamic and a masculine dynamic, right? I'm not saying feminine as in just only feminine, as in just being receptive and just kind of going with the flow at all times, no matter what happens, and never keeping meetings and never keeping up to your responsibilities. I'm saying listen clearly to what the world really wants of you. And then act on it in this way that you're executing on the plans that you've been given. Does that make sense?
Makes full sense to me, and that resonated so deeply with me because I think that I was so attached to my agenda professionally that I wasn't necessarily looking for the signs. So I'd say, over the course of the last 4 years with the podcast, the most common questions I get from people are, how do you start a podcast? What's your experience? What do I need to know? What equipment do I need? How do I get the best out of my guests? So, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for so long, I was so resistant to this idea of being a guy who helps other people launch their podcasts, because I'm like, no, I care about being real and helping people be real with themselves and others. Yet this, helping people launch their podcast and get their message out there is arguably just as, supportive in getting the message of being real out there as the way that I was attached to doing it. So that was, me really being like, wow, I have been getting these signs from the universe and I've been pushing them away.
What's interesting about some of the wording you used that I thought was really interesting. You said you were attached. You said it was attached to my agenda of XYZ, right? And what I'd love to know is like that agenda that you had, right? Or that going towards that identity of being the podcaster and not teaching people how to do it or whatever it was. My question is like, why the podcast in the first place? Like why, that's what I would love to know. And I'd love to invite people to dive into is like, where did that agenda come from? You know what I mean? Like, why did you choose that? I'm asking you, why did you choose that agenda?
I chose the agenda because I'd done my authenticity workshops a couple times and had a really beautiful, resounding response to them, and people were making changes in their lives. Why did you do the authenticity workshops? Because I had a desire to live more authentically.
Why?
Because I felt like I wasn't.
Because you felt like you weren't. Yeah. When did you first start feeling like you weren't living authentically?
I'd say that I realized it a lot earlier than when I actually realized exactly what it was. And I think to me, it was all the societal pressures and expectations of others and, wanting to find my place in the world and be in sync with, with the rest of the world. I started to conform. And so while I realized that I was conforming, trying to fit in 7th and 8th grade and so forth, which just kind of, the dominoes continued to, fall, which led to me getting to a corporate job. Yeah. And then when I got divorced, that was kind of that Phoenix moment for me where I was like, wow, I got to burn it all down. And I have a new opportunity to start fresh. What do I want to do? And I realized, wow, I totally became a victim to some of these abstract societal pressures, expectations of others, as well as my own inner critic, which is loud, that it was, I'm sure I'm not the only person. Yeah. And that I really realized that authenticity is not a destination. It's not a black and white thing. You're either authentic or you're not. It's literally a moment by moment, day-to-day practice.
When did you first feel pressure on you?
From my older brother, I'd say, as a young kid.
How young?
Probably 4 or 5 years old, I'd say. Yeah, in terms of liking the things that he liked.
Yeah. How did that feel?
I think that it was like a double-edged sword, because in some regards it felt really good because I got to play and I got to connect with my brother and I got exposed to things that maybe I wouldn't have done if it weren't for him.
If you did what he liked.
Right.
If you did what he accepted.
On the flip side, I always felt second best. And I also that's when I kind of started to give my power away to somebody else, thinking, okay, this person knows better than me. Or this person's jumping into the spotlight. They're more deserving of the attention than I am. So I think that's like going way back to where it all started.
So that's where the fucking juice is in my mind. Is what I heard you say there is that, and I'm going to condense it, is like, sure. When you were 4, 5 years old, you learned that you needed to be someone else to be accepted.
Well said.
And that feeling fucking sucks, right? Because it's not in alignment with your soul. It's not in alignment with like your you. So you learned at 4 or 5 years old, you needed to be someone. You couldn't be you. You weren't enough. You know?
Yeah.
And now we fast forward. You have a podcast called Are You Being Real? / People Being Real. /
I think we're fitting the mold of super superficial here today.
Yeah, exactly. We're now into it. And you have this, and there's a part of this podcast that is helping 4-year-old Mark Shapiro.
100%.
And that is a fucking beautiful thing, you know? And we get out there and we say, you know, I say, oh yeah, the people are like, why are you funding schools all over the world? And I say, well, because, you know, I want these people to have opportunity. I want these people to have choice, et cetera, et cetera. And in reality, if we went, and it's true. And on a deeper level, I want to show my dad that I'm enough. I want to show my parents I'm a good boy. Whoa, holy shit, you know? And in doing that, I used to be really scared of that. I used to be really scared of looking that deep at what actually motivated me. But there's a beauty in it. There's a beauty in looking into what some people call it the dark, you know? And like this Osho quote that I love says, for a tree's branches to reach heaven, its roots have to reach hell. Right? For a tree's branches to reach heaven, its roots have to reach hell. Like that big tree in your yard. You think those roots are just like skimming along the surface? Those things are fucking deep, right? It's a big tree. Because it's got really deep roots. It's gone into the dark. There's no light under there. It's gone into the dark. It can reach up to the light, right? And that's, in my mind, that's our job, is to like keep diving into the dark, dive into that part that scares us. Go back and say hi to 4-year-old Mark. Because that's the guy, that's the person. We want to tell all these other people how to be authentic. We want to show them that they can be authentic. We want to tell them that they're enough. And in reality, the person that needs to know that he's enough is 4-year-old fucking Mark. Right? And that's who needs to know. And by the way, Mark, I'll tell him, you were enough now, and you were always enough.
Thank you for sharing that. And it brought something back to me, a reflection actually of you, if I may. So we went to David's birthday in Utah a couple of years ago, and it was your turn to, I think, like water ski.
Wakeboarding.
It was wakeboarding. And you were like, yeah, I think I'll give it a try.
I've never done it before.
You were kind of soft. You said you'd never done it before. And then, you know, you get out there and you're just absolutely shredding it. Like clearly, you know, grew up on a lake. Like you are so good at this. And at the same time, you also got injured. Yeah. So I thought of that earlier in this conversation.
I was on crutches after that.
Right. Because you had said that sometimes when you are trying to prove yourself, that's when you find your health deteriorates or you get yourself into trouble. So that came right up for me. You know, it's like, it's so interesting when we actually like have the courage to like, you know, see each other and make observations. It's like, oh yeah, like you made that beautiful observation of me, which like even when you were talking to me like on my show, I felt so uncomfortable.
Just now?
Yeah, I felt so uncomfortable.
Because you have a hurt inner child?
I think that's the defense mechanism is because the hurt inner child feels not good enough. So if someone tells me about something that I perceive as a weakness, it only keeps sounding that alarm, which is just like the walls that I've built around myself. So, it's like being aware of that. It's like, oh, okay, this is not that big of a deal, but like this is the wall that I have built around my wound and my trauma.
Right.
But the reason why I like bring this up is a lot of times, we have alternate motives. There's usually many motives in any actions that we take. And, I look at something like social media, I think is a great example. But is someone's post literally just to share a piece of wisdom, maybe? Or is part of it is they want to be associated with said piece of wisdom, or they want to be validated and liked for said wisdom? Yeah. And, when you add things like sales into the equation, there's so many components. But I think every time our intention is just a little bit off, where it's like a little bit just about me, or it's like a little bit about like wanting to look good, or a little bit of wanting to be seen, it's never going to truly resonate the way you want it to.
No, totally. That was the funniest / painful moment ever. And to paint the picture of this wakeboarding, I went out wakeboarding in a onesie, and I said I'd never wakeboarded before.
You did, yeah.
And they're like, well, you should take the onesie off. I'm like, I just want to wear it. It'll be fine. And so I had the onesie on like over the life jacket, right? And got up and I pretended that I'd never wakeboarded before, and then gently started like carving a bit. And then I started jumping the wake and started like showing, right? And did the thing. And then I thought, I'm going to impress them even more, and went way outside the wake. And I just fucking just ripped. And I did this massive jump over the wake. Boom, twisted my knee, twisted my ankle. I ended up on crutches, ended up in the hospital to get it fixed. Well, they didn't have to do surgery or anything like that, but it aggravated an old injury, right? And isn't that interesting? It aggravated an old physical injury because I was doing an old pattern of like really trying to impress people, right? Like this is the thing. Everything's reflection, Mark. Like anything that I trigger in you, it's fucking you, right? Anything you trigger in me, it's fucking me. It's not you. You know what I mean? And the cool thing is that we can also have those times where we see something in someone and then we're like, I love that. And that means that you at least have the seed of it inside you, right? Like I reference you all the time in our company. I said, my buddy Mark, his communication, he's like this. I was talking about you the other day. I said, if Mark doesn't want to go somewhere, he goes, no, I don't want to go there. That's it. He doesn't go, sorry, like they're Canadian. Sorry, but it's just not a fit today because I've got this thing tonight. It's just like, nope, just not on my radar. Thanks though. And then you're done with it, right? And I want our community, our company to model that kind of communication. And because of living with you, I didn't tell you this, because of living with you, we send all of our employees to MITT or to ALA because of the communication that you have with me. And I want all of our employees to have that, right? So anyways, that's something that I noticed. And then I can also acknowledge, instead of talking about all the dark stuff, I can acknowledge that I've got it in me. I've got the seed of that potential communication. And so I channel you from time to time, right? Going like, this is how much, because I feel I'm a huge people pleaser, right? I really want people to like me, and have gone to great lengths to get to ensure that people like me. Like exhausting. How fucking exhausting is that?
So exhausting.
Holy shit.
So exhausting.
The amount of time. Yeah. And what we're really doing is like, I'm protecting my inner child while doing that, right? I want to be enough. I want to be liked. I want to I don't want to be kicked out. I was bullied as a kid. I was excluded. My sister would exclude me from her and her friends hanging out, and it felt terrible. It's the worst feeling I had in the world, right? And which is a similar story of a lot of people that start these like communities when they're older. And they say, I want to help people connect. I want to help people feel at home. I want to help people feel welcome. And in reality, their inner child never felt welcome. So now they're trying to heal it through those other people, right? And that's where I think that's where the good stuff comes in. I hope I'm not going like too deep into like personal stuff, but
I think it's great because I think we've kind of really attacked this from many different angles here. And, really starting with taking responsibility for the things that bother you and being aware of your triggers and realizing that it's probably dating back to some really old wound when you were a kid, and that pattern is just so deeply ingrained with you. But I think like another big thing here that's like, as we go full circle, it's about how can we be loving, supportive interruptions in each other's lives. And I think like the vulnerability to lovingly have the conversation you had with me, or the ability to have this conversation at all, because I know for me personally, even though I was, very loved, had a very supportive community before I got divorced, before I started doing self-development work, there was no one who was really able to reflect back to me how I showed up to them, or how they saw me, or where they thought I was getting in my own way in like a loving, supportive way that actually resonated with me, that didn't just cause my walls to go right up. So I think it's an incredibly important thing, and I think just by being loving and kind and supportive and having open, honest conversations, owning our own vulnerabilities, owning our own insecurities is just such a great gateway of opening up, essentially those lanes to have those conversations, but also just to deeply connect.
Yeah, bro. Exactly.
Question for you. So what is something that you want to burn down right now in your life, or something you're working on?
You know what, man? I've had trouble really feeling loved in relationships. When a woman says, I love you and all that stuff, I don't believe them. I see them talking, I hear the words, and there's been a lot of my life where I don't believe it. And I'm like, yeah, I love you too. And in reality, I'm not letting it in. So I know that, the annoying cliche is that I have to love myself first. So I'm spending a lot of time loving myself, accepting myself, telling myself that I'm enough. Because that's my core wound, is that not feeling like I'm enough. Mm-hmm. And so,
there's two of us.
Yeah. And what a fucker that is, eh? Son of a bitch. A lot of times when it comes up, I'm like, oh, you again. Hello. Yeah. Almost before every speaking gig that I do, I've spoken all over the world in front of 100,000 people. It comes up every time. Now I know, and I look myself in the mirror and I just go, hey, buddy, you're enough.
Question number 3, another fun one. You are a true aficionado of chocolate. Oh, yeah. And you're always carrying around a lot of chocolate, buying more chocolate when you already have an abundance of chocolate, serving delicious cacao, which has been a great treat to be drinking right now. What's at the top of the list, or any hot chocolate tips? Not necessarily hot chocolate, but your favorite chocolate tips you want to give to listeners of the show.
Yeah, my tip is send me chocolate if you can. If you have the ability to, don't think that I have enough. I don't have enough. That's the thing, that's not enough. I don't have enough. I need more chocolate. So if you want to send them to me, make sure it's 80% or more, please. Cacao. The other stuff is just bullshit. But so that's tip number 1, is always 80% or more, 90, 95%. And this is going to, not to try to make something that's not super deep, but go high quality. Here's what I like to do with my chocolate, like that chocolate I bought today, is I'm going to enjoy every little piece of that, right? Because it's super high quality. I don't buy the $2 stuff, because I don't know. I don't want to make this super cliche weird sayings in it, but it's you live life once. That's something that the nice thing about being 37 is I've got a pretty clear idea of what I like and what I don't like. You know what I mean? Your 20s, you're just kind of farting around, trying a bunch of random stuff, and you're like, oh, definitely don't like that. It's massive contrast. I fucking love dark chocolate and I love avocados. Okay? And surfing. Those are my 3 things.
My next question for you, Taylor, is in regards to kind of owning and sharing one's authentic voice. As I've been saying with this podcast since the start, regardless of what the name of it was or is that there's 7 billion people and there's only one of each of us. And there's, we all have a role that only we can serve. And being someone who helps people refine their message and, speak their message, amplify their message and their ideas out to the world, what would be just your wisdom for any human walking this planet as to the unique gift they are and the message they have?
I think there's a lot of messengers that are dying with their message still inside them. I think the feelings that you and I have shared today about us not feeling like we're enough plague society. We're not the only two, and just happen to run into each other and happen to do a podcast together, right? And those feelings of inadequacy or the fear of failure really hold us back from doing some really incredible things in our lives. When I had the fundraising company, Change Heroes, I would watch some people would raise $10,000 and build a school. Some people would raise enough money to build a house. And many, many more people would fail. And the reason they would fail is because they actually would never start. and I would listen to them, and they would be worried about what other people would think. They would be worried about if they didn't hit their goal, how they would look. I can only imagine what would happen in the world if we actually didn't care what other people thought. If we actually went from that impulse that's inside us, that's saying, build a school or build a house, and we genuinely went with that before the equivalent of when lightning comes down and then a couple seconds later you hear the thunder. I feel like the lightning is that natural, authentic impulse. That's the thing we're supposed to do. And then a couple seconds later, the fear comes in, and it's fucking loud as thunder. It comes in and it's like, you shouldn't do that because you might fail. You shouldn't do that because this person might think this way. You shouldn't do that because of blah, 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 blah. If we could shut out that thunder, we could just have quiet, pure impulses and follow those all of our days. I mean, that in my mind, that's the definition of the soul's path. That's the definition of what you're here for. And the impact that would be created. Imagine if you didn't care what other people thought. Imagine if you didn't care about failure. The impact that you could create on human life, on this planet, on consciousness is absolutely unfathomable.
That's so good. Total mic drop moment there. So Taylor, I'm glad I asked you that question to wrap up this part of the interview. As we close it out, what can we do to support you?
The way that you can support me best is my job now. I love speaking, right? Been speaking all over the world for the last 8 years. I love it, on 6 continents, all over the place. There's one place that I love more than being on stage, and it's actually being side stage and watching someone that I've helped to land that talk, that I've helped them with their, to watching them do their thing. Yeah. That's where my role is now. I'm shifting into that role, and it feels really good. And so the way that I do that at scale is I help people land TEDx talks, right? In my mind, it's the most credible, efficient, effective stage on earth. And so the way that you could help me is by owning that you have a sincere, impactful message that you want to share with the world, and then letting me help you get that TEDx talk. That's how you can help me the most anyways. I mean, that's my business, is I help people get TEDx talks. So it's a beautiful, mutual, beneficial arrangement. And the best way to get in contact, I don't do email. The best way to get in contact with me is Instagram. So Taylor A. Conroy on Instagram, hit me up on that. Tell me what your TEDx idea is, and then let me help you get it out there to millions of people.
If you have a message that you're burning to share, do not hesitate. Do not overthink it. Do not let that thunderous voice get in the way of your lightning, because Taylor, it is a tremendous gift that you have in supporting people in getting TEDx talks and getting their message out there. And I am someone who can personally attest to that because I went to a workshop that you were facilitating with your steps to get a TEDx talk. And we literally started working together, and you helped me land a TEDx talk in a couple of weeks.
You did great at that, by the way.
Thank you. It was so fast, and just the opportunity to practice everything that you had experienced time and time again in the 4 TEDx talks that you've given, and it just supported me immensely in terms of really crafting my message, how I wanted the audience to walk away with it, as well as how to market it and get it out there. It's just been invaluable, and I'll always have given a TEDx talk. It was something I always wanted to do once I heard of TEDx, but I was always thinking, maybe sometime later when, I had this or I had that. And you just helped me step on the big stage, and it was amazing. So if you've got a message you want to share, definitely check out Taylor's amazing videos. And if you feel called, definitely work with them. So T, last question, what words of wisdom, advice, inspiration, what do you want to leave listeners of the show with here today?
Yeah, I would say it seems like the common thread here is self-acceptance, right? And acceptance of where we're at in our lives. So my words of wisdom is wherever you're at, that's exactly where you're at. It might sound simplistic or vague, but you're there. And so if you accept exactly where you're at, if it's a high or low, wherever it is, you're just going to enjoy the next thing that much more, right? If you're at rock bottom, you're at rock bottom. Okay, that's where you are. Stop complaining about it, own it, and then get clear on where you want to go.
The one and only Taylor A. Conroy. Yeah. I love you, brother.
I love you too.